So when we look at Seesaw for Schools, there's a lot of different features that you can do, and it looks a little different than the free version. So I'm just going to start kind of going through some of these resources, and this presentation will be shared along with the video when we're done. So the first thing that you will need to know is that the sync is set up from Skyward using Clever, and it is set up to pull language arts, art, music, and PE rosters. So any kindergarten through second grade student, and then those rosters will get pulled and synced through Clever. If you are a teacher that has a roster section of one of those areas, then that's how the teachers get added to the Seesaw paid dashboard. So you will not want to manually create your class if you're a kindergarten through second grade classroom teacher. So that is the first difference. In the past, you manually created your class. You will use the class that is synced for you. Now, as of right now, because the building secretaries are just getting back into the building, they haven't set up all of the language arts rosters in Skyward yet. So when I looked this morning, only Madison, Grant, Etude, and Longfellow had anything syncing. So if you are a teacher at one of those other buildings, when you go into your Seesaw account right now, you won't see these extra features until your building secretary sets up those rosters for language arts, and then it starts syncing. So they will be coming, and that's why we're kind of just doing this more informationally today. When I say language arts rosters, really that's kind of your core homeroom group. Now, again, with the smaller hybrid model, we don't really know how buildings are going to set up those rosters in Skyward. So if you're a interventionist that's going to be teaching a small group this year, and we don't know how those are going to get entered. We've had conversations with the informational technology department, and it'll be kind of how the building sets up those rosters. So some of that is going to have to get kind of worked out yet as we move through August. But once those rosters have synced, they'll kind of default to, grade 2 language arts in your last name, however those class names show up in Skyward. And those can be renamed. So however you rename your class by going into the settings and then clicking on class name here at the top, you can take out whatever language arts it says and rename it. So even though it says language arts, it's basically your core kind of homeroom classroom group. Another feature with the Seesaw for Schools is the number of teachers you can have per class. So in the past, if you had the free version, you really could only add one additional co-teacher for a total of 2 teachers. With Seesaw for Schools, you can have up to 20 teachers per class. So if you have, co-teachers or other, individuals that are working with your students, this is how you can add those additional teachers and not have, only the limit of 2. And again, that's done the same way by going into that settings and then under manage teachers, and you can type in, the email address of the teacher that you're inviting to teach your class with you. A lot of the additional features are going to come in when you're creating activities. So with the free version of Seesaw, you were limited to being able to create and save 100 activities. And once you reached that 100 activity limit in your My Library, you had to remove some before you could add new ones. Well, with Seesaw for Schools, that now is unlimited. So you can create as many activities as you would like. You can save as many from the library. You no longer have a limit. You also have the ability to create multiple page activities and posts. So with the free version, when you created an activity, you only had the first one page. But now with the Seesaw for Schools, you can have multiple pages. So this was an activity that my students had submitted, and you can see this 1 out of 2 and 2 out of 2 because there's multiple pages in my activity. And when I go whether to create the activity as a template or just posting student work, down along the right-hand side here, I see the 1, and I can add additional pages to the list. And these can be reordered just by clicking and dragging the pages as well. If you were uploading a PDF, for instance, and that PDF has multiple pages, what it will do is it will actually take that PDF and it will split each page of the PDF and make it a separate page in your Seesaw activity. So I uploaded a 2-page PDF, and now I see I have 2 pages within my Seesaw activity. And you can use each of the creative tools, the recording and the text on each page of your activity. You also have the ability, by clicking the 3 dots along the side, to either duplicate a page. So if you created a page, like maybe a sort or a matching, and you wanted to duplicate that without having to recreate it every time, you can do that, or you can delete a page. In addition to the multiple page activities and posts, you also have drafts and send back options. And what that allows you and the students to do is, instead of always clicking the green check, if a student was working on something and they weren't quite ready to submit it to you for approval, but they were, maybe end of class, or they needed to come back to it at a later time, they can click this draft button and it will save that post as a draft. And you'll see an orange banner that will appear across the top. And this would be for you and the students. And then you could come back and click the edit button to return to working on that draft. So that's how the drafts work. The send back for revisions, this is an option that when your students submit a response for an activity, instead of just having the approve and the delete button, you will also have a send back option. And what's nice about that is sometimes when your students complete an activity, maybe they've made a mistake, or you would like them to change something or fix something. And you don't want to approve it, because approving it would send it to their journal for their parents to see, submitted anyone that was connected. But you want to have them make those changes first. Well, you could send it back, and when you send it back to them, it will show up kind of in that draft mode where it'll be flagged as a draft, and then they can go in and edit that draft, make the changes, and then resubmit it to you for approval. Another option for activities with Seesaw for Schools is the ability to schedule the activities in advance. So if you're planning out your week and you go into activities, and you're going into your library, instead of posting the activities immediately, you can click the schedule button and select a date and time that you want that activity to show up for your students. So if I go to assign and I click what class I want to assign it to, normally you would just click the green assign button, but to schedule it, you would click the schedule button first, change it from immediately to a specific date and time, and then you can pick the date and the time you want that to appear, hit the green check, and now instead of saying assign to one class, it says assign on this date and time. And so students will not see this activity until that scheduled time. And you can find those scheduled activities when you go to your activities tab. Assigned to class are ones that your students already see, and scheduled would be ones that will be posted at a future time. So I can see that this was scheduled for tomorrow at 9:13 a.m. And I can always edit that if I need to before it's posted. One last thing I want to talk about with activities is the ability to organize your activities into collections. This is for you as the teacher to help organize. And what happens there is when you go into the activity library and you go to My Library, you will see all of your recent activities at the top. So anything that you've recently created or added to your library will appear at the top. Give my computer a second to load here. And then underneath those recent ones, you have your collections. So think of collections as kind of folders to organize activities. This is, again, before you've assigned them to students. This is just to help you organize your library of activities. You can create up to 100 collections by typing in the name of your collection and then clicking Create. To assign or move activities to a collection, it will tell you here, like, activities not in a collection. So it's telling me I have 21 activities that I haven't put in a collection. So I could click there. I could see all of these activities I haven't assigned yet. And I can click the Organize button and select which activity I want, or which collection I want to add that activity to. Now when I go back to my library, I can see that I had 21 activities down in the collection. Now that's down to 18, and I have, additional activities. The other way to add activities to one of these collections, if you were just in the activity itself, and you click the three dots. This top option says add to a collection. And here's where you can also add it to like additional collections. So if it was in more than one category, I could select a second category here too. So I'm going to pause there because that's kind of the differences with activities and some of the tools. And I know there was a lot of questions that were coming through, and I know Julia and Sarah were kind of answering some, but was there any additional ones that we should address?
I was just typing back. Chris, wait, you had a question about when you want to send back something to a student. Right now, Seesaw does not have the option for you to comment and send it back. It is just merely the button to send back. What I've been doing is I'll send it back and then I'll comment directly to that student, giving them some tips or do a voice recording or something like that.
You do have the comment feature within Seesaw. So if I go to my journal here, you can leave a comment on the post itself, but that stays with the post. So even after the student makes the changes and then resubmits it, that comment is still there unless you remove it. So in this example here, when I was, kind of playing around with the send back option, the student had some, incorrect information in the tally box. So I had used the send back option. I had left this comment for them so they knew kind of why I was sending it back. And that was just using the comment feature here. Then they fixed it and I approved it. Now, this comment is still there. I could leave it so that, the student and their parent knows that, it was, something was changed. Or I could delete this comment if, okay, now they fixed it. We're good to go.
Denny, another question that came through was talking about co-teachers uploading activities and videos into a collection. So if you can talk a little bit about that.
Okay, unfortunately right now, the collections are just for an individual teacher. And there isn't a way to share a collection. I know I've contacted Seesaw directly about that because teachers have asked, like, if I make a collection of activities, instead of sharing 20 activities, with my, co-teaching partner or something, can I share a whole collection? And that is not available right now. But hopefully, that may be a feature that comes out if there's enough interest. But right now, the collection is just a user-specific organization method.
And the last question I see, Sarah, unless you see something else, there was a question about the difference between Seesaw Plus and Seesaw Schools. So just remember that we are talking about the free version of Seesaw when we're talking about some of these differences. So if you were a Seesaw ambassador, you might have seen some of these things. But Jenny, if there's anything else you want to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, Seesaw for the free version is just like your basic version. Seesaw for Schools is, again, the paid one that's done by, like, at the district or school level, that's synced. And then Seesaw Plus, if you're an ambassador, you have Seesaw Plus. But individual teachers can also purchase Seesaw Plus. They don't advertise it as much as they used to, but this would be if your school wasn't buying it and you really felt like you wanted some of these features, you could just get that version for an individual teacher. So
Jenny, Michelle really liked that math activity that you had. Was that one that you created or was that one that came from the community?
I guess I have a couple. I'm not sure which one. You want to unmute yourself and you can clarify?
It was the one with the 10 frame and the little fact house and the tally sheet. That was really a nice one.
I did make that one myself. I had kind of found the idea somewhere. Like, I think this was probably the example I had used. Somebody else had created this one, and then that activity that I showed as a model was one that I had made for one of my schools, and I had kind of taken the example I had found online and tweaked it for what they were trying to use with their students. So I built.
Maybe you could share that, because I think we did quite a bit of that together as a team. But maybe that'd be a great, if you have just 2 seconds to copy that link and share it. Do you know what I mean?
This one?
To show the teachers how to share it with a coworker.
Okay, so that actually sharing actually leads me into my next area. Is currently you could always share activities by just going in and copying the link for an activity. So you create an activity, and then you could go in, share it, copy the activity link, and then send that link or paste that link. That's kind of how we did the F&P phonics resources. We had that spreadsheet where you would copy the link. Now with Seesaw for schools, you will have one additional option. So when you go into your activity library, right now you probably see like the community library, which is like the public, everybody, and then you have my library. You will eventually see another one in between here, and it will probably be just your school library, I would think. Again, because it hasn't started syncing and my account's a little different, I don't see it, but there will be a school library, and you could share things to the school library so that anybody that's Seesaw for schools in that same school would have access to it. Will you as text word be included in our building? We have admin rights to all the buildings, but I don't know necessarily that we would be included in one specific building for the library. Okay, it says school and district library. Then again, I wasn't sure if it was going to be the whole district, like if somebody from Longfellow shared something, would Grant be able to see it or not? I wasn't sure how our system was set up, because when I see it, I see different individual schools under the umbrella. So, but when I go to the 3 dots to share an activity, and then share to the Seesaw library, you won't see because that's the public one. But you will have share to school and district libraries. And then this is where I could share. It looks like I would have the ability to share to maybe more than, to multiple schools. But so that's in addition to this get activity link, the ability to just copy and paste that link. And then another note kind of at the school or district level, that once a family member connects to a student, they will remain connected to that student from year to year. So if a family member connects to a kindergarten student, as long as they continue to have Seesaw for Schools and their account is synced, when the student is in first grade, that parent or guardian or family member would not have to reconnect to that student. It will remember it from year to year. And also, once the student or the family member connects to the student for their, regular ed classroom, their, language arts class, they will automatically be connected for art, music, PE, any other class that student is enrolled in. So because it's syncing, it's all tied together, and this family member doesn't have to connect for individual classes. That also means that when students log in, they will be enrolled in multiple classes and they don't need to sign in and out to switch. So if, the art teacher is posting something, they wouldn't have to sign out of their, homeroom class to sign back into art. They will have, just like, teachers would have if you're in multiple classes, up here in the left corner where you see your name, it says, right now I'm in teacher mode, so I have 3 classes. And if I click there, I see the 3 classes that I'm enrolled in. The students would have the same thing. They would click their name, and then they would see any classes. So they might see art, they might see their language arts class, PE, and then they can click on any of these classes to switch between them. Now, the important part to remember and to remind students is that they always want to make sure they're looking at what class they're in. Because a lot of times it will default alphabetically and they'll start in their art class. And if they're posting something, maybe they're posting a math assignment, well, they didn't realize they were in art, and then the teacher can't find it because it's in the wrong class. And so it's a good, thing when you're first starting your kids in Seesaw to just make sure you point out, always look at what class you're in, before you start posting. And I did make a video. So in this slide deck that's going to get shared out, there's individual individual videos. Any of these like underlined links are all links, how-to videos kind of going through each of these. And I did make a video for students on how to switch between your classes. So that would be something you could share with students if they were having trouble. The one last thing I want to mention here is that because we're syncing with Skyward and Clever, that your students can sign into the Clever app or the Clever website and then launch Seesaw from there. So really, especially for your kindergarten and first grade, if they scan their little QR code badge on their iPad in the Clever app and they click on Seesaw, from there it'll launch, it'll open up the Seesaw app, and they'll be signed in to their class. The last thing I had on this slide deck as we wrap up time here is there is a feature called Skills that's also available with Seesaw for Schools. It's kind of like a standards-based grading, and you can tag posts for different skills and kind of have a snapshot of monitoring progress. Again, I did record a video, and it's linked here in this slide deck. If you are interested in learning more about skills, I would encourage you to watch that video or reach out to one of us coaches, and we'll be happy to assist.
Jenny, can you talk about logging into Seesaw and maybe differentiating between kindergarten with the iPads and second grade with the Chromebooks using Clever?
Yeah, so if you're a second grade teacher on the Chromebooks, you can kind of use the sign in with Google method. So you still have your different sign in modes when you go to your class settings. And if I would go into a class that has the sign in with Google method, which is this class. So if I'm a second grade teacher, I could change the method to sign in with Google. And then students would have the option of going directly to app.seesaw.me and logging in with Google, and they would be taken to their class. That is one option for the Chromebooks. For the iPads, we recommend, going through Clever, because then that way they're signed in kind of as that individual already, rather than using the class shared QR codes. It's just a little more secure, and because everybody will be one-to-one, they can just kind of sign into their account. So they would go open up the Clever badge on their iPad, scan their Clever QR badge, and then launch Seesaw from there. And they should see Seesaw on their Clever dashboard because it's going to be pushed out from the district. It should be there already.
There was a question that came up earlier about when we go from the paid version, which I just got response. We have Seesaw for schools for 1 year currently for the district. So for 2021, we'll have it for just this 1 year. Jenny, can you talk about what happens when we go back to the free version and the activities that teachers have already created? What's going to happen with those activities?
When we had reached out to Seesaw during spring, because I know several teachers had done like a 60-day free trial of some of the paid features when we first went virtual, and they were concerned when their trial was ending before the end of the school year. We had kind of reached out, and they said, no activities that you created would be lost. So if you did create multiple page activities or you had more than 100, those wouldn't be lost. You just wouldn't be able to add any more additional ones until you had removed some. Any other questions?